Yeah, no, my guess is that the default for us going back years. That's an excellent question. I feel like we should take it from you if we can, but if you can next, just because I don't have an answer, I don't want to, but so it's Bertus Oglensky, right? So I'm going to do my best to. I don't have a pin on me. I'm going to do my best to remember to say it. But I think what happened, my guess. No, 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 it's here. So, oh, I know why. I know why. It's because we were reading it for Rosh Hashanah. Like we had to print out for like the week. Okay, that's what it was. I thought I read it last Friday, and that's why I was like, that's weird. Okay, got it. Okay, good. All right, good. Excellent. Excellent, excellent. Mm, boy, Kevin is not here. Kevin, we have to give the young man a break every once in a while. The truth is, every year Howard's like, "What? The cantor's not here?" And I'm like, this is not the easiest job. The high holidays, you have to rest voices. If you, he did a great job, and Yom Kippur is the most draining stuff because it's a lot. From a cantorial standpoint, it's a lot of really big pieces with a lot of big range, and even with the stuff we've cut down over the years, it's still quite a lot. And on top of it, it's like, what's that? Yeah, yeah, yeah. But the truth is, most of our cantors in my time have been second year students when they've come to us. So that means they essentially they come straight from Israel. And in Israel, for one reason or another, they don't teach them high holiday stuff at all. Like they teach them like the most minimal amount of it, and instead they end up learning weekday nusach primarily because it's the building block of all the other stuff, which makes some kind of sense. But then all these students that come back with almost no high holiday prep whatsoever. So like Tamara, Lauren, and Emily, all three of them came right from Israel to us. Tamara had the hardest of it all because she had straight from Israel, and I was brand new. So that first year, she was, to her credit, was amazing, like from beginning to end. Because otherwise, that's a tough draw. But in Kevin's case, he's coming in since he's a fourth year student. He has already more general experience. But what yeah, yeah, yeah. And he also was a song leader in camp, back in the day. So that gives you sort of another a bit of it. But the truth is that almost none of that becomes practically helpful because almost everything that we're doing has nothing to do with any of that, right? These big cantorial pieces that are much more complex. The real challenge, actually, in which he and Kirsten are masterful, and most of us would never realize, is they had almost no time to rehearse together, right? They had like barely any time whatsoever. A little bit back in Brooklyn, and that's it. So the fact that they were able to do all the stuff they did in the way that they did it is testament to them, certainly. That's for sure. All right, well, we're going to get started. So, a Shabbat Shalom to everyone. Shabbat Shalom, Kruensteins. Good to see you. And of course, a Shana Tova and a Gemar Chatima Tova as we shift our attention to Yom Kippur. Don't worry, this will keep going. It's fine. And I'm going to tell everyone at the outset, keeping on a long-standing tradition since I started here for various reasons, tonight's sermon will be an Ask the Rabbi session. So you can already start thinking of your questions. Neil's got one primed and loaded, but anybody else who's been holding on, they do not have to be high holiday themed. They can be general, they can be factual, they can be existential. Just try with a little bit of Rahmanas for your rabbi whose brain is a little bit fried. Just try not to ask me anything that I truly do not have any chance of answering. But we'll get there. We'll get there in a little bit. But first, we're going to light and bless our Shabbat candles, and we'll welcome, of course, all of our friends watching from home. And the blessing can be found on page 120 in your Sederim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner להדליק נר של Shabbat. We'll start our service together on page 130 at the very top of the page. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena l'Adonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena l'Adonai. Naria, naria, letzori shenu nekadma fanav betodaham. Naria, naria, letzori shenu bizmirot naria lo. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena l'Adonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena l'Adonai. We're now on page 131, Shiru l'Adonai, just in the middle of the page. Shiru l'Adonai, Shiru shir chadash, Shiru l'Adonai, kol haaretz, Shiru l'Adonai, baruch hu shemo, basru meyom leyom yeshuato, Shiru l'Adonai, baruch hu shemo, basru meyom leyom yeshuato, Shiru l'Adonai, Shiru shir chadash, Shiru l'Adonai, kol haaretz, Shiru l'Adonai, baruch hu shemo, basru meyom leyom yeshuato, Shiru l'Adonai, baruch hu shemo, basru meyom leyom yeshuato. Turn now to page 132, very bottom of the page, Or Zarua. Or Zarua lahatzadik, ulehishrei lev simcha. Or Zarua lahatzadik, ulehishrei lev simcha. Simechu tzadikim b'Adonai, v'hodu lezecher kodsho. Simechu tzadikim b'Adonai, v'hodu lezecher kodsho. We'll turn now to page 134, at the very top of the page, Zamru l'Adonai. Zamru l'Adonai bechi nohor, v'kol zimra, b'chatzotzrot v'kol shofar. Ahariu lifnei hamelech Adonai, Yiram hayamum lo. Tevel veyoshveva, neharot imcha uchav yachad, harim yiraneinu, lifnei Adonai kiva, lishbot haaretz, yishbot tevel betzedek, Ve'hamim mesharim, Yiram hayamum lo, Tevel ve'yoshveva, Neharot imcha uchaf yachad, Harim yiraneinu. We're now on page 135, Romemu, which is the last paragraph in Hebrew in the middle of the page. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu להקודשו כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. We will turn now to Lecha Dodi on page 138. A reminder, we'll do the first, second, fifth, and ninth paragraphs. For the last one, we'll rise and face towards the rear of the room. Lecha Dodi likrat kalai alalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabelai lecha Dodi likrat kalai alalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabelai Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad ishmi'anu el hamiuchad Adonai echad u'shmo echad l'shemu tiferet ve'elitila Lecha Dodi likrat kalai alalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabelai lecha Dodi likrat kalai alalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabelai likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha ki mekor haberacha merosh mikedem nesucha sof maaseh b'machshava tchila lecha Dodi likrat kalai alalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela hitoreri kiva orech kumi uri shir daberi kevod Adonai halayich nigla lecha Dodi likrat kalai alalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela boi v'shalom ateret bala gam besimcha uvetzolam toch emunei hamsegula boi chala lecha Dodi likrat kalai alalai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Please be seated. We're now on page 140, Tzadik Katamar, just where the Hebrew indents in the middle of the page. Tzadik Katamar yifrach keres bavanon yizke shetulim beveit Adonai bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu od yenuvun beseva deshenim merananim yehu lehagin ki ashar Adonai surim velo ablata bo. otherwise, in body or spirit for the Chatzi Kaddish on page 144. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah Ve'alma divrach irutei ve'amlich malchutei V'chayechon uv'yomechon Uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael Bagala Uvizman kariv veimeru. Amen. Yeshme Rabba mevarach le'alam le'almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitroham v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal shemei dekudsha brichu leila min kol birchata v'shirata Tushbechata v'nechemata Tamihiran be'alma ve'meru. Amen. Now page 146. Baruchu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach le'olam va'ed. Please be seated. Let's read together on the bottom of page 148 in English. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzvaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening. Umavir yom umevi laila, umavdil ben yom uven laila, Adonai tzvaot shemo, el chai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed, Baruch ata Adonai, Amahari v'aravim. We'll turn now to page 150 and we'll read together in English. Everlasting love you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Ki ehem chayinu ve'orech yameinu v'hem negei yomav v'layla v'avatcha al tasir mimenu li'olamim Baruch ata Adonai ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Join me on the top of page 154. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha u'bechol nafshecha u'bechol meodecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha Veshinantam lebanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha v'veitecha u'v'lechtecha v'aderech u'shochbecha u'vkumecha u'kshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot beinenecha u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'v'hisharecha Leman tiskeru vasitem et kol mitzvotai v'item kedoshim le'Elohechem Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem mi'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem emet. We'll now read together on the top of page 157. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. As we turn to page 158, the very top of the page. Ya bye bye bim 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 bam, ya bye 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 bim bam, ya bye bye bim 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 bam, ya bye 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 bim bam, ya bye 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 bye, ya bye 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 bim bam, ya bye 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 bye, ya bye 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 bim bam. Mi chamocha ba'alim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh. Nor tehilot osefele, nor tehilot osefele. Ya bye bye bim 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 bam, ya bye 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 bim bam, ya bye bye bim 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 bam, ya bye 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 bim bam, ya bye 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 bye, ya bye 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 bim bam, ya bye 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 bye, ya bye 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 bim bam. Malchutecha ra'u vanecha, bokeam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam zeli anu ve'amru, Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed. V'nemar kifad Adonai et Yaakov, u'golo miyad chazak mimenu, Baruch ata Adonai, Gal Yisrael. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up, waiting to do your will. Hashkivenu, page 160. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom, v'hamidenu Shomreinu lechayim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom, v'hamidenu Shomreinu lechayim. Ushmor tzeiteinu, uvoeinu, lechaim u'shalom, me'ata ve'ad olam. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom, ve'hamidenu Shomreinu lechayim. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Yerushalayim. Turn now to page 162, the very top. Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, ledorotam berit olam, Einai beheni, ubein b'nei Yisrael, oti le'olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai, et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, uvayom hashevi, Shabbat, Shabbat vayinafash. Invite us now to rise in body or in spirit as we begin the Amidah together on page 164. And then from that point, continue silently. As always, please go at your own pace. And if you're finished at the end and you're still standing, you may be seated. Adonai sefatai tiftachu v'yagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Oseh shalom bimromav, uyaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. We'll turn now to page 371 as we prepare to offer our Mishaberach tonight. And of course, in addition to the names that I'll read in just a moment, we extend our hearts and our minds and our thoughts and our prayers to Florida and what will become a reality for the Carolinas soon as well in the aftermath of the hurricane. And we know this will be an ongoing reality, so we as a community will also find ways to support in a physical sense, but we extend ourselves also in a spiritual and a religious sense as well in praying for healing. In addition to those people suffering, we're also thinking of people in our community who also need a little extra love this week. We're thinking of Allison Luckman, Malka Bat Chaya Sura, Spencer Levy, Michael Klinghoffer, Amy Cass, Steve Levine, Rivka Bat Rachel, Leah Bat Naomi, Gedalia Ben Sylvia, Lorraine Danis, David Dowling, Sivya Devora Bat Francis, Muriel Hirsch, Michelle Sawicki, Francis Kirschman, Shelley Newmark, Diane Axelrod, Gabriella Rose Spicer, Barbara Kushner, David Kyle Klopman, Lorraine Davis, Joan Price, Talia Akita Pomeroy, Dina Bat Chana, Chana Bat Miriam, Dr. Harlan Spitz, Deborah Block Kroll, Sylvia Orn, Lydia Gold, Stanley Rappaport, Lynn Cowan, Michoel Ben Chananya, Karen Layton, Debbie Bookvar, Chris Klopp, Jerry Leibowitz, Mitchell Eden, Talia Batsandra, Gail and Richard Gambino, Yasha Rosen, and Sissy Godinsky. In addition to the names that we just read, if there's anyone with us this evening has additional names to share, we'll start on this side of the room and work towards the back, and then this side of the room. And of course, invite those watching at home to add names as well. We'll join together with the Mishaberach on page 371, just in the middle of the page. Mishaberach avotenu mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu, mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Again, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Mar Chatima Tova. So, as I said, tonight is Ask the Rabbi, and thanks to the wonders of technology, I have another microphone, so anybody who would like to ask their question can be heard by the internet as well as in the room itself. Make sure it's all working. Yes, isn't that cool? I feel like a televangelist now. I can walk down, say hi to the people. All right, Neil, you go first. Then anybody else who would like afterwards, Neil will pass it to you. Just remember that the High Holidays is entirely dependent on this microphone, so do not drop it, whatever you do. It's like the Torah. Do not drop it.
So I want to know how many questions I'm entitled to.
Well, let's start with one, and then we'll see if anybody else has any additional ones.
Okay.
We'll go.
Why are you laughing?
Because you are a very funny guy. Yes. All right. Shoot.
So why do we call this Shabbos Shuvah?
Good. I like the way you said it. Also, Shabbos Shuvah it rolls off the tongue much better than Shabbat Shuvah. Very good question, Neil. Very good. So there's a few different reasons, and actually Shabbat Shuvah is one of several different what we would call special Shabbatot throughout the year. And they're made to seem very special, but a lot of times their reason for existence is actually something rather simple. So Shabbat Shuvah gets its designation because of where it's located. And it's the Shabbat that is in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And the buzzword that we have for Yom Kippur that we all know is what? What's the one word we associate mostly with Yom Kippur? Pin drop. Shuvah. Okay, Teshuvah, Shuvah. Okay, so shuv, this root that we have in the word, in English, what do we usually say shuvah means, if we were going to translate it? Repentance. Usually it means, right, it's translated as repentance, right? So tikkun is a repair, but the idea of shuv, in its essence, la shuv, means to return. So teshuvah has in its essence this idea of returning to something. The question of what it is we are returning to, that's where there's lots of space for the rabbis to determine and all of that. But its main idea is this idea of repentance means usually that you've returned to a similar both time period and when you're in a similar circumstance to where you've made a mistake and you do the opposite, right? You do the right thing. That's one of the examples in which we've gone sort of full circle. So the reason, though, that it's called Shabbat Shuvah, other than the fact that it's located around the holiday of Yom Kippur and associated with the word Shuvah, has to do with the Haftarah that we read tomorrow. So its opening word, if I remember correctly, is shuv, is telling basically it's this idea of asking God to return us to our ideal state, right? Returning exiles to the land of Israel, returning us to a state of purity, returning us as a people to a place in which we are closer to God. So the key thing about Shabbat Shuvah is not so much why it's named that, but what we're supposed to have in our minds and what we're doing with this particular Shabbat. It's to focus our energies really on the act of repentance. So throughout the Yamim Noraim, these 10 days of awe, right, we have a whole period of time bookended by these holidays. But the whole period of time, and truth be told, actually going back from before the holidays even began, we're supposed to be in this mindset of doing this very significant spiritual work of first identifying where we have erred, second, taking responsibility for the mistakes that we've made, and third, trying, really actually borrowing the word that Bonnie brought up, right, of a tikkun, of a repairing of either broken relationships or broken circumstances. And remember, though, that Yom Kippur, the liturgy, all the stuff that we're doing on the holidays is primarily focused on our relationship to God, which I know is not the easiest avenue for most of us, but that's its original idea, that's its original theological basis. And really, our relationship to human beings, like, for example, Kol Nidre doesn't get us out of anything as it relates to other people. If we don't go and actually apologize, if we don't go and actually try to make amends, if we don't try to repair our behavior, all the stuff that relates to God is affected by that. So it's on sort of two planes. But the main thing, to go back to Neil's original question, you get 4 answers to one question.
No, I wanted like a 3-word answer.
Of course you want. You always want a 3-word answer, but you didn't hire a 3-word rabbi. So what can I tell you? But the main idea, again, is that it gets its name really from the Haftarah that we'll read tomorrow. So good plug for coming to shul tomorrow or watching online. We'll see whether the rabbi was right or not. But excellent question, Neil. You've started us off in good vein. Was there anything I left out of my answer that you would like to know?
No,
Okay, you feel overwhelmed.
But
Overwhelmed with it.
But I don't remember.
That's okay. I rely on that.
So who?
Bonnie, I think, wants to go next. So we can pass it to Ira to Bonnie. Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so my question is about reading prayers versus reciting them without reading them.
In other words, the sections that we do out loud as opposed to the sections that are done silently, is that the...
No. It's a question. I have some understanding, and maybe it's a misconception, that it's not as holy or sacred to recite prayers without looking at them in the text and reading them.
Oh, you mean, in other words, reciting something by memory as opposed to reading it off the page.
That's
Is that
it.
the question?
That's
Okay,
it.
good. No, I'm glad I asked the clarify. So the first thing to remember, all right, the idea of this thing that we hold up called a siddur, not as ancient an idea as one might think. Anybody who's been an active member of my Friday class, I will tell you, the oldest siddur that we have is actually 8th century, if I remember correctly, Seder Rav Amram. So prior to that, right, there's a big gap of time between the 9th century, 8th, 9th century, and the beginnings of what we call rabbinic Judaism after the temple is destroyed. And the reason why this is relevant is when the temple is destroyed, the main functioning way in which the Israelites, right, our predecessors prayed was through sacrifice and through the temple. That was the primary means by which it took place. The rabbis basically are the ones who create what we would refer to as our liturgy, right? So in the eras before, for example, common literacy, that's one. The eras before the printing press, that's two. You had mostly people who were operating solely by memory, but there is a general concern that the rabbis have about, how should I put this? Repetitious action that doesn't have a sense of why it is you're saying and what it is that you're saying. There is a danger, I think all of us know, of rote education, the kind in which you just say the same thing over and over and over and over again. You learn it, and you're internalizing it, you're memorized it, but the question is whether the person actually knows to what they're doing. So the beauty thing is the rabbis created a construct of a relationship between two ideas, keva and kavanah. Keva is what's referred to really as the sort of the fixed way of things. So the fact that we do the prayers in the order that we do them, or that they happen in these particular days or times of day or whatever it might be. And the kavanah is the intention that we put into it. So the challenge, of course, is striking the balance between the kind of space that allows for kavanah to take place. A lot of times taking people out of the book helps them with that, right? On the other hand, I don't know the particular teaching that you're referencing, but I can understand where it would be coming from when you were taught it. This idea that if you're doing everything from memory, you're most likely acting solely in a rote kind of capacity. That, you know, and I'll just talk from my own experience. For the way that I learned to daven as a kid was not exclusively by learning to read it. A lot of the way that I learned to daven was sitting next to my dad in shul, right, or my grandfather or my mom, and hearing things and then repeating them back. And children do very well with that kind of education. But remember my second master's degree is in Jewish education, so part of my learning was about different modes of pedagogy and different mechanisms for teaching and the best ways to teach. And what I found, having taught lots of different kids from a lot of different backgrounds, is the great thing about Judaism is there's lots of different ways in. And you might have one kid who actually does way better just doing it from the repetitious aspect and then being able to put it back out into the world. And you might have others who are just much more comfortable being able to read it off the page. But I think, for me, for example, after years and years and years of doing the same prayers, oftentimes the same exact kind of way, I do find myself from time to time going into sort of auto mode. And so I'm very cognizant of this question because I think it's actually a really important one, is where is the balance, right? And I have to check myself every once in a while, or sometimes I'm checked by others in the congregation who will sort of point out something, like, for example, recently I've been going much faster in the Mourner's Kaddish because I know it so well, right? I say it all the time in various capacities. But for people who are saying Kaddish maybe for the first time in their life on a regular basis, they can't keep up. So it was actually really helpful to get that kind of feedback. I still have to remind myself from time to time, but it's all from the same root of your question, which is, how do you strike the balance between when you're so familiar with a text that you could say it by heart, but still remember that no matter how much we've memorized the words, thinking about what they mean and dwelling on their impact on us as human beings and us personally is a different part of our essence. And if we're too much in one place or another, it doesn't work. That's why the Keva Kavanah thing is designed to work together, not in opposition to each other. It's more of a sort of Jewish yin-yang kind of concept. So, hope that answered that.
Beautiful, yes, thank you.
Oh, good. Okay, to Marcia. It's convenient. It goes right behind. Look at that.
I have two questions.
Sure, two questions. Okay, good.
I don't know the answer to this. So, in the prayer for healing, where we say refuah shlema, what does that mean? I have no idea.
Excellent question. It's an excellent question. And I'm sorry that I actually have not probably stopped to no, because it's interesting. There are a few places in our prayer book in which there was a conscious choice to write an italicized version of the Hebrew rather than trying to translate it into English. Just before I answer the question, what might your instinct be about those particular words? Why would they choose certain phrases to leave in the original Hebrew rather than trying to translate? What do you think?
With some sort of a blessing.
Okay, all right. Any other thoughts as to why that might be the case? Why the editors of this particular prayer book would want to do that? So the best way I can explain it is that there are, like in any language, when you translate it from one to the other, oftentimes things are lost. In particular, things are lost when they're idiomatic. So, there's lots of phrases we use in English, for example, if you tried to translate it literally into Japanese or vice versa, you might actually insult somebody without realizing. In this case, it's not about that, but it's about this idea of refuah shlema. You can translate it literally. Refuah means basically is healing. Rofeh is a doctor. And shlema, shlemut, shalom, right? All of these are from the same root, which means a state of wholeness. So what you're asking for basically is not just a healing on, like, let's say I have a cut and the cut heals. It is a entire healing, right? Because as we know, anybody, for example, who has injured themselves, been physically healed, may tell you that their emotional scarring from the experience or their sort of metaphysical scarring from the experience doesn't heal for a year afterwards. So refuah shlema is more than just this simple concept of the body, for example. It's a holistic prayer, in essence, for a healing of the totality of the person. So the question as to why they leave it in here where there are other places where they wouldn't necessarily do that, I can only surmise it's because there would be something lost in translating it into something like a full healing or a whole healing or something like that, which would be technically accurate, but losing some essence of what the Hebrew is trying to intimate. But I'll just point out, for example, its inclusion here, the translation of what you see below, it's not a translation of what you're saying here, right? Misha berach imotenu mekor habracha la'avotenu is not really what's in English right below. So there are places in our prayer book in which there is a direct translation, where it's intended to be direct, and then there are other places where the translation is more idiomatic, more trying to speak to the essence of whatever the prayer is ultimately about. So excellent question, and my guess is that if we're paying close attention, there are lots of other places in this prayer book where things like that are sprinkled through. Great question.
And the other question is, since COVID, and I think I might have asked this before, we stopped singing the Psalm of David.
Oh, means more. Okay, so quick answer to that is, I believe it was just early on when I put Lauren in charge of designing our service, and I think either she left it out or it just never made it in there or something like that happened, and then we kind of continued on. So my intention is to bring it back. It's always been a favorite of mine in any case. And just so, as we've talked about over the years, just as a reminder, the Psalms that appear in Kabbalat Shabbat are meant to connect to the Psalms that were recited in the temple on each particular day. So the 29th Psalm, which is what you're referring to, that begins with Mizmor LaDavid, a Song of David, is usually one of the ones that's associated with Shabbat itself. So all the more reason why it should work its way back in. So good question, and we will resolve to fix that by next week, most likely. Okay, good, Nicole. We'll work our way back. And we can take a moment to really appreciate, again, technology. How all of this works is just remarkable to me, right? It's all just no wires, just floating through the air. Go ahead, Nicole.
This is a very light question compared to the previous ones, but it came up at our Yontif table last Sunday, which is, as we were about to make the motzi, I pointed out that, of course, I made round challah this year, for Rosh Hashanah instead of the traditional braided ones. And it seemed just like, well, of course I knew the reason, but then, of course, when I pointed it out and a discussion ensued about what the reason was, I realized that we could all come up with a lot of hypotheses as to why we have a round challah instead of a braided challah for the high holiday, the whole season.
Right.
We didn't really know the actual answer, so perhaps you can help us.
It's a great one. I will give you the answer that I've always been told is the most common, which is my guess is what you guys determined as well, which is that, part of this sort of cycle of the year, right, Rosh Hashanah in particular, is an image of going full circle, right? And going back to Neil's original question about this idea of tshuva, of shuv, of returning, right? This idea that we are perhaps more, I shouldn't say this, but we principally as part of Judaism, we celebrate cycles, okay, right? 7 days of creation, which then manifest ultimately into many other iterations of that idea. But it goes back in some ways to the conversation we just had about the word shlema. Right, this idea that in Judaism as a general principle, the idea of something completing a full circle or a complete unit is the idealized form of things. When everything has reached a state of shlemut, of wholeness, that's its principally ideal form. So the challahs, like most things that we have, function in this way as a symbolic representation of what is unique and different of this particular part of the year. And I don't know where in our challah baking history its origins really begin. It's a fascinating consideration because I suspect it's like a lot of things that it happened at some point in time. Somebody decided this would be a lovely thing to do as they're making their challahs, and it became a minhag that then, after the fact, was given a rationale, which is entirely possible. But but David looks like he's got an idea. What do you think? Or are you just pulling the mask down for a second? Got some thoughts?
No, I thought that was a possible reason. I also thought it was possible that it was a fertility symbol.
It could very well be that as well. The only reason I would sort of hesitate to say that it's that is only because with Sukkot coming up, Sukkot has a lot of that built into it for sure. A lot of the imagery around fertility, and it's a whole nother conversation as it relates to Sukkot. Maybe we'll talk about it actually in a couple weeks, or less than a couple weeks. But I think that in general, as an idea, it would make a lot of sense. I'll also just say on a personal level, when Lou and I announced that we were expecting Eva, her decision was that we should take a picture. It was exactly Rosh Hashanah. I was preparing my sermons as usual at the last minute, and she tracks me outside. And so we took a picture outside in the parking lot of the shul where she held a round challah over her belly like this. I'll try to find the picture as a symbol of what is to come. So I don't know, maybe channeling that idea, David. But I will say this much: my guess is that if I were to go and research it now, I'd find no less than probably 5 or 6 different explanations, all of which probably being quite legitimate. So the most important thing to me, I will tell you, of your question that you just asked, is that I love that was the conversation. And that's one of the beauties of the Shabbat table or the holiday table or however you can do it. And I remember as a kid, this was a huge part of my education. It's built into our Jewish pedagogy to some degree, that it's like the Seder, right? Where do we get the opportunity to ask and receive questions of this sort? And especially ones in which it's a comfortable environment where people can ask the question and not feel like they are somehow less than because they didn't know the answer or whatever it might be. So I invite you all, whenever you find yourself in a situation where you're around a table for Shabbat or the holidays or whatever it might be, do exactly as Nicole and David did, right? And everybody who was around the table with them. Try to find the opportunities to ask these questions. And if you get stumped, that's why we have occasional Ask the Rabbis, not just to give me a break, because it's a good chance for all of us to learn, right? Great questions all around. All right, I think we have time for one more if anybody has. Otherwise, we'll... Okay, Neil has one more question. So David's bringing you the mic. Look, this is your big opportunity to have a microphone. You don't want to pass that up. David, thank you for making the long walk. Appreciate it.
So I always try to end the session with a stupid thing that I like to say. If a person wears a toupee, does he need to wear a yarmulke as well?
This is the question that you've asked me many times over the years, of which
and I've asked this many times, and I still get a laugh. So
you still
let's leave it. Let's leave it.
And I don't know whether my answer has changed over the years, but the answer is yes. You still must wear a yarmulke in that case, I think.
Okay.
But
come get your microphone.
I'm gonna come. Mostly just we have it when we need it. But great. Great job all around. While we contemplate Neil's excellent question, we'll rise to page 586. 586 on the bottom of the page. Aleinu l'shabeach. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol latif gedula leoser breshit shelo asanu kegoye haratzot velo samanu kemishpachot ha'adama. Shelo sama chelkeinu kahem vegor aleinu kechol hamonam v'anachnu ko'im u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. Page 591. V'nehemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz. Bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad. Invite those in mourning, those observing yahrzeit, to please remain standing. Everyone else may be seated at this time. We think first of those who've passed in our community in recent months. Martin Blake, Lynn Cowan, Faith Diskin, Arlene Eber, Jay Fagan, Ellen Frank, Chaim Bear Greenwald, Gerald Hirsch, Mark Joseph, Jane Beard Cass, Gertrude Katz, Buddy Kossoff, Helene Krotman, Emmanuel Kiprios, Leo Leibowitz, David Lieberman, Sandra Tromberg Luongo, Norma Paulsek, Lillian Schwartz, David Senth, Anita Sheldon, Alan Silver, Larry Wartor, Miriam Unger Weinfeld, Peter Weinstein, Rita Weitzman, and Matthew Adam Zimmerman. We also marked the yard sites that occurred during the last week for Dr. John Abdrakin, Dr. Paul Abrams, Miles Ambrose, Margaret Benjamin, Jerome Bloom, Joseph Barak, Yvonne Cohen, Judy Friedman, Terry Becker Friedman, Nathan Galpern, Ben Gauze, Joan Gilbert, Georgette Huberman, Esther Cosberg, May Bruckman Levine, Vilma Levine, Paul Nelson, Gary Nussbaum, Bertus Oglensky, Fanny Peskowitz, Bernard Radetsky, Rona Rube, Clara Simon, Rose Slutsky, Ernestine Spitz, Katie Spitz, John Strong, and Shira Zeller. Is anyone who's with us tonight saying Kaddish for anyone that we did not mention? Okay, we'll invite those watching at home to add the names of your loved ones as well, and I'll invite the mourners to join with me on page 598. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayichon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, v'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'le'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudsha b'richu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalama Rabbah min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav Uyaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Zichronam livracha, may every one of their memories be for a blessing. Okay, please be seated. Again, Shabbat Shalom, everybody, and Gemar Chatima Tova, Lashana Tova. Few announcements. First is, of course, to join us for services tomorrow, Shabbat Shavua services, where you'll hear the Haftorah beginning at 9:30. You can join us in person here at the Old Whalers Church. We're just in the chapel, so we enter through the side of the building. Or you can join us on Zoom, our website, YouTube, or Facebook channels. Also, a reminder that Torah study tomorrow will be led by Myra Peskowitz, as the study of the Torah will be led using a Torah a Women's commentary. And again, Myra, if you've never had the chance of learning with Myra, she is one of our great teachers in our community. So please do join us again, 12 o'clock on Zoom tomorrow for a Women's Torah commentary. Reminder that Yom Kippur begins Tuesday evening. Kol Nidre services here at 7 o'clock in the sanctuary. And again, reminder that the services begin the next morning at 10 o'clock, and then various services throughout the days. It's very important to just check your email, make sure that you have all that stuff. If you're coming here, please bring your entrance cards again. Everybody did a really excellent job for Rosh Hashanah, really excellent job. It made everything go so much more smoothly. So we really appreciate it. If we can just do that for one more set of holidays, we will really appreciate it on our end. Shelley did mention to me, though, she still is looking for some volunteers and ushers. So if you can give her even 15 minutes at the beginning of the service would make a big, big help. So just let Shelley know if you can, and if not, when you show up on the day of, that will be just fine as well. And please do check. It looks like the weather, God willing, will hopefully be okay here next week, so we should be able to have our outdoor youth services and our teen service and our extra Yisker service this year for those who are not members or prefer to be outside. So just we hope that will be the case, but please be checking constantly for emails from us in case there is any change due to weather. Just a reminder, temple office will be closed next Wednesday for the Chag. And then, of course, we have a lot of stuff coming up for Sukkot, so we're looking forward to that as well, including ordering lulav and etrog. So if you are interested in that, we just need to let Eileen know. The information on that, I think, is usually sent out this week, if I remember correctly. So we have lots of different options available. It will be mailed to us, so then you can pick it up anytime before. And when we get back to the temple, we will have a full-size sukkah again. For this year, we are on a smaller size. I think we're in a pretty small size one, but we're going to set it up as we did last year so that anybody throughout the week who would like to come and fulfill the mitzvah of Leshev Basukah, sitting down, having a meal, and using the Arba Minim, the 4 species together with the etrog, whatever it is, that will work for you, we're going to set it up on the side of the building, and it will be available so long as the weather holds throughout the week, so everyone can participate. Janet. Thank you, Janet. Absolutely. So again, everybody who hopefully is participating in our food drive for the food pantry here in Sag Harbor at the Old Whalers Church, If you didn't pick up bags with information on what is needed, I think there still are some bags that are available. We can pick them up during the week. If you can, again, please bring them for Kol Nidre services on Tuesday evening, and then all of that will be used by the food pantry in great order. So thank you, Janet, for reminding me for sure. And if for any reason you're not going to be here, please just let Eileen in the office know and try to work out a time to make a drop-off, and that's good. All right, Neil. Oh, good. Sure, that is one method to get them here for sure. But that is a very nice thing. It's the one challenge of splitting the services is that I'm with the younger families. I didn't get to see the teen service, but I heard it was great. I heard Kevin did a great job, and we had a great, really nice crowd. He'll come. But for sure, and we really thank everybody again who was able to come throughout the holiday, and we really had lovely, lovely time, especially at Tashlich. Just very, very good stuff all around. So, with that, I'll wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom, and I think to close tonight we'll do Shalom Aleichem. We haven't done that in a while, and then we'll do Kiddush and Motzi. Just a reminder to everybody who's with us here in the room, if you can bring your Sidurim, your prayer books back to Bob and Joe, that would be a big help, and they'll happily reward you with challahs, and I think even some apple cake that may still be edible. We'll see. We'll make Neil try it first. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so Shalom Aleichem is on page 627. Marsh is on it as usual. 627. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mihi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem leshalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon. Mihi melech malachei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. Baruch hu ni leshalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon. Mihi melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. Tzedchem leshalom malachei hashalom malachei elyon. Mihi melech malchei hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We'll rise for Kiddush on page 123. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam b'horei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabahat kodsho b'ahava u'v'ratzon inchilanu zikaron lemahaseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikrae kodesh zecher letziat mitzrayim ki banu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabahat kodshecha ve'ahava u'v'ratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. Amen. L'chaim, Shana Tova, Gemar Chatima Tova, Shabbat Shalom, and thank you everybody for coming tonight. Extra bonus points. Everybody who shows up for Shabbat Shalom gets extra bonus points. Extra Rugelach. That's really what we're talking about. Okay, good questions, Neil. What's that? Oh no, you're right. Maybe we didn't do the most. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Yeah, far from sleeping. Very good. Right. Bracha for honey cake. Mezonot, I would assume, right? Although it's a good question. What you know what though? It's one of those questions probably is how much of the item, right, is apple? How much of the item is everything else? My guess is, though, in this particular case, your safe bet is Mizana. Good. Shabbat shalom. Thank you, Neil. Good questions. Very good questions. Oh, Neil, one other thing just for us to think about sooner than later is, here, let me just turn this up here, is what